Halfway through Love Me Tender, Elvis stopped. The arena fell silent. A boy in the front oxygen line, catching the spotlight, hadn't paid to be here. Elvis knew it. Everyone was about to know why. If you believe moments like this deserve to be remembered, stay with me to the end, because what happened after the show is even more powerful than what happened on stage. The year was 1975, a warm southern night, thick with the smell of popcorn, sweat, and cologne drifting through the air of a sold-out arena. Neon beer signs glowed behind the concession stands. Programs rustled in impatient hands. Somewhere in the distance, an amp hummed like a restless engine. On stage, Elvis Presley stood in his white jumpsuit with a powder blue scarf, the rhinestones catching every beam of the spotlight. His voice rolled through the rafters, deep and sure, wrapping itself around Love Me Tender. Then he stopped. No missed lyric, no mistake, just a sudden, deliberate lift of his left hand. The band fell silent, mid-chord. The crowd's roar tapered to a hush so complete you could hear the faint hiss of the monitors and the squeak of a seat as someone shifted. Elvis's gaze locked on the front row. There, among a sea of sequins and cowboy hats, sat a boy who couldn't have been more than 8. His frame was small, his skin pale. A thin plastic oxygen tube looped around his ears, disappearing into the folds of his shirt. Beside him, a woman, his mother, clutched a folded piece of paper so tightly the edges curled. Her knuckles were white. From the wings, a security guard shifted his weight, eyes flicking between the boy and Elvis. He knew. Some of the crew knew. Backstage before the show, they'd heard the story in fragments. Kid couldn't pay for a ticket. Got caught trying to watch through the loading dock. The boy, oblivious to the whispers, was staring straight at Elvis. Not blinking, not smiling, just watching, as if willing himself to remember every detail. The air in the arena felt heavier now. The audience didn't yet know what was happening, but they could feel the shift. Conversation stalled. A woman in the third row whispered, "What's he doing?" Elvis took a slow step toward the edge of the stage, then another. His boots thudded softly against the wood, each footfall picked up faintly by the mic. The blue scarf swayed with his movement, catching the light. He stepped off the riser, closing the distance. Fans leaned forward in their seats. Camera flashes cracked in the darkness, and then, without breaking eye contact with the boy, Elvis started down the steps into the pit. The crowd held its breath. Whatever was about to happen, it wasn't part of the show. Elvis reached the rail, his hand just inches from the boy's, and the entire arena seemed to lean in that afternoon. Before the first ticket was scanned, before the arena filled with sound, a boy and his mother stood on the cracked sidewalk outside the venue gates. It was still light out, the sun dropping low, brushing the metal siding of the building in gold. Inside, muffled bass lines thumped through the walls. Sound check. The boy pressed his ear to the cool metal, eyes shut as if he could see through it. In his hands, a piece of cardboard bent from the pressure of his grip. In black marker, shaky letters read, "Play Love Me Tender." Witnesses later said his mother spoke softly, almost to herself. "He's been saving up, but we're short." Her tone was careful, each word balanced on the edge of guilt. They had come anyway. A stagehand on a cigarette break spotted them first. The smell of fresh-cut grass from the nearby lot drifted on the warm air. He noticed the boy's oxygen tube, glinting in the sun. "You waiting for someone?" he asked, keeping his voice casual. The mother smiled politely, shaking her head. just listening for a while. From inside, the band hit a run of chords. The boy's eyes flickered open. He knew that sound. It was the opening of a song. He'd heard on vinyl so many times the grooves were worn. The stagehand lingered, torn between heading back to work and doing something he couldn't quite name. Eventually, he slipped through the side door, the heavy metal latch clanging shut. Behind him, inside, under the echo of the arena's empty seats, he found the tour manager. "Hey," he began, "there's a kid outside. Little guy, oxygen tank. Looks like he's here for the sound check." But the manager cut him off. "Doors open. In 2 hours, nothing I can do." But the stagehand didn't move. "He's holding a sign. Says, 'Love me tender.'" The manager sighed, rubbing his temple. "I'll see if there's a way." By then, the mother had crouched beside her son, pointing toward the faraway sound of tuning guitars, trying to make the wait feel like a treat instead of a failure. Security eventually let them inside just before showtime. No seat assignment, just the instruction. "Stay here. Someone will come for you." The boy's face lit up in the darkened tunnel leading toward the floor. He didn't care where here was. He was in. He could feel the vibration of the crowd, smell the faint tank of beer and cologne rolling in waves from the concourse. The cardboard sign stayed clutched in his hand, ink smudging where his fingers had sweated. He had no idea that his presence, this quiet arrival, would ripple outward, pulling not just a few strangers into his story, but 18,000 people, hours. Later, as the lights dropped and the first chords rang out, a spotlight swept the crowd. It found him, and it found Elvis looking right back. The spotlight lingered. The crowd didn't yet understand why, but Elvis did. He stepped down from the stage. Each movement was slow, deliberate. The pit security tensed, unsure if they should move. When he reached the boy, Elvis crouched low, his knees nearly touching the arena floor. The white jumpsuit creaked at the seams. The blue scarf slipped forward over his shoulder, brushing the boy's hand. "Hey, little man," Elvis said quietly, voice gravelly but warm. The boy's mother tried to rise, but Elvis held out a hand. Not to stop her, but to steady her. In her lap, that folded paper peeked out, edges worn. Elvis glanced at it, then back to her. Without a word, he took the paper and slid it gently back into her purse. Those close enough to see recognized. The header, hospital billing department. He stood, motioned to the nearest security guard. "Give them the front seat." The murmur started in the first rows, a low wave of surprise, then swelled into cheers that rolled toward the rafters. The guard, caught between protocol and the moment, nodded and guided them to 2 seats just feet from the stage. Elvis turned back toward the band, but paused. He walked to the edge of the stage again, microphone in hand. "You know this one, son?" The boy nodded, lips parting like he'd been waiting for the question all night. Elvis lowered the mic, holding it so their voices could meet somewhere in the middle. The band eased in softly, tentatively, and together they sang just one stanza of "Love Me Tender." The boy's voice was faint, but the crowd leaned in as if volume didn't matter. It was the sound of someone singing to their hero, and being heard. Flashbulbs popped like distant fireworks. The heat of the stage lights warmed the velvet curtain behind them. Somewhere in the cheap seats, a woman sobbed into her hands. When the last note faded, Elvis draped the blue scarf around the boy's shoulders. He leaned close enough for only the boy and his mother to hear. "You keep that, you hear." Then, with a final pat on the boy's shoulder, he stepped back onto the stage riser. As he walked toward his mark, he caught his manager's eye. One nod, subtle, intentional. It wasn't just a thank you for moving them to the front. It was a signal. Something bigger was coming. The band kicked into the next song. But backstage, the phone lines were already being used for something other than booking the next gig. Intermission, the house lights came up halfway, casting a pale glow over the restless crowd. Concession lines reformed. Fans buzzed about that moment with the boy backstage. The energy was different, tense, purposeful. Elvis's manager had the phone receiver tucked between his ear and shoulder, speaking in clipped sentences. Box. Office. Yeah. Listen carefully. Refund every cent the woman spent getting here. Gas, motel, food, whatever shows on her ticket record, and she's not to know until after the show. On the other end, the cashier hesitated. Sir, that's not standard procedure. It's Elvis's procedure tonight. The manager's tone left no room for argument. In the corner, a trusted crew member leaned against a speaker case, arms crossed. Boss, he's serious about this. He also told me to handle her hospital bill, full. The manager covered the phone with his palm, glanced toward the dressing room door. All of it. The crew member nodded. All of it. Through the half-open door, Elvis paced the small space. The scarf was now folded over a chair, but his stage boots still tapped against the linoleum. A paper cup of water sat untouched on the counter beside a row of hairbrushes and a single jar of pomade from down the hall. The band's warm-up leaked in muted chords, a few brass notes, the drummer testing the snare, a young lighting tech, still buzzing from the first set, peeked around the corner. He caught sight of Elvis, alone, staring at his own reflection in the mirror. Some say Elvis was mouthing something to himself, maybe the boy's name, maybe the lyrics they'd just shared. The phone clicked as the manager hung up. It's set, he said to the crew member. Refunds in motion. Bill will be handled first thing tomorrow, quietly, no press release, no public gesture. Just the kind of help that didn't need an audience. Outside the dressing room, the stagehands were already prepping for the second act, tightening mic stands, coiling cables, wiping down the piano keys, the scent of sawdust from the stage. Repairs mixed with the faint aroma of cigarettes drifting in from the loading dock. But even as the crew moved, there was a feeling that what had happened in the first half wasn't over. Elvis stepped out into the hallway, gave his manager a short nod. Let's finish the show. None of them knew the story would follow that boy home, and end with something that would outshine even the memory of this night. 1 week later, the boy's mother opened her front door to find a large, battered guitar case leaning against the porch railing. It was early morning, dew clung to the grass, and the chill still lingered from the night. The street was quiet, except for the faint hum of a milk truck passing 2 blocks away. She bent to pick up the case, surprised by its weight. The worn leather handle felt warm against her palm, as if it had just been carried. The latches were scuffed, edges nicked from years of use. A single paper tag dangled from the handle, her name handwritten in black ink. No return address. Inside, resting on soft green felt, was a sunburst Gibson guitar. The wood gleamed under the thin morning light. Across the pickguard in silver ink were the words, "You'll always have a seat in the front row." Elvis. Her breath caught. She ran her fingertips over the signature, half afraid it might smear away. Beneath the guitar lay a sealed envelope. Inside was a typed letter from an office she didn't recognize. She read it once, then again, slower. The hospital bill paid in full, every cent. Her knees gave out, and she sat back on the porch step, the letter trembling in her hands. From inside the house came the sound of small feet padding across the floor. The boy stepped out, his oxygen tube looping around his ears, eyes widening when he saw the guitar. "For me," he whispered. She nodded, unable to speak. He approached slowly, as if afraid the case might close on its own. When he plucked the first string, the note rang pure, warm, and bright in the morning air. The smell of polished wood rose from the case. The green felt soft beneath his small hands as he lifted the instrument. It was almost as tall as he was. She set the envelope aside and reached to steady the guitar on his lap. For a moment, there was no hospital, no bills, no crowded waiting rooms. Just her boy smiling, a rare, full smile, with sunlight catching. In his hair, from across the street, a curtain shifted. Their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Whitaker, stood in her window, watching. Later, she would tell friends at the diner that she'd seen a black Cadillac idling at the far end of the block. A man in a dark cap sat behind the wheel. He didn't get out. He didn't knock. He just watched for a while, then pulled away, the engine's low rumble fading into the morning. Some said it was just a coincidence. Others swore they caught a glimpse of sideburns under that cap. Back on the porch, the boy strummed again, the sound echoing off the houses like a secret meant to be shared. The mother slipped the signature-covered guitar back into its case, pressing. The latches closed with care. The envelope she tucked inside, under the green felt, where it would stay safe. She looked down the street, toward the empty corner where the car had been, and though no one else was there, she said softly, "Thank you." The guitar would stay in their family for decades, but the real gift that day wasn't the wood or the strings, it was what it left in the boy. Years passed. The boy grew taller, the oxygen tube eventually gone, replaced by a stronger frame and a deeper laugh. But the guitar never left his side. The sun burst. Gibson sat in the corner of his room. Its signature now faded to a soft silver ghost across the pickguard. He played it at school talent shows, at church picnics, and sometimes, late at night, just for himself. When friends came over, they'd ask about the story. He never told it the same way twice. Sometimes he'd start with, "One time Elvis stopped," a whole concert. Other times, he'd begin with the morning the guitar arrived, but one part never changed. How Elvis looked right at him, like there was no one else in the room. Fans from that night remembered it too. Some years later, a local radio host did a segment called "The Night the King Paused." Callers phoned in with their memories. "I remember the hush. It was like the air went still. It wasn't just music that night. It was family for 3 minutes. He saw him, really saw him, even those in the cheap seats so far. Back the stage was just a speck of light, said they could feel it." The boy, now a man, would hear those recordings sometimes and just smile. He knew it wasn't about the seat, or the song, or even the guitar. It was about the pause, the moment Elvis chose to stop being an untouchable star and became a neighbor, a friend, a man willing to step off the stage. In his 20s, the boy started playing in small bars. The Gibson was still there, its body carrying every ding and scratch from years of use. People noticed the signature, asked if it was real. He'd shrugged and say, "It's real enough for me." On quiet evenings, he'd visit his mother. She still had the original envelope from the hospital tucked in a drawer. Its type faded, but the numbers clear. Balance, $0. They'd sit in the living room, him strumming, her humming along to Love Me Tender. As the vinyl spun on the turntable, the world outside moved on. Elvis passed in 77. Tours ended. Venues changed names. But for them, that night never aged. One day, decades later, his own daughter asked, "Daddy, who's Elvis?" He didn't launch into the full story. He just reached for the Gibson, let her feel the strings, and said, "Someone who knew when to stop singing and start listening." Sometimes kindness doesn't echo in headlines. Sometimes it just lives in the sound of a guitar, still ringing in the same key it did that night. According to people close to Elvis, gestures like this weren't rare. He often helped quietly, paying medical bills, covering funeral costs, slipping cash into someone's coat pocket. That Gibson is still in the family, displayed in a glass case, its signature worn but visible. Strings changed only when absolutely necessary. It's more than an instrument now. It's proof that even in a room of 18,000 people, you can make just one person feel like they're the only one who matters. The song he played that night still plays, not on the radio, not on stage, but in the moments people remember when they think about what kindness can do. Elvis didn't just stop a show, he stopped time for someone who needed it most. If this story touched you, share it with someone who believes kindness can stop a room. And tell us in the comments, what's the most unforgettable act of kindness you've ever seen?